I mean, this is a story that has been told many times. It's something we see we're obsessed with in the local media, taking cameras down to the downtown east side. We're visitors when we go down there.
Yeah.
Was part of it trying to get past the being a visitor?
Oh, absolutely. And in the end, I was ultimately just a tourist in this scene. But I heavily immersed myself as much as I could for that month. So, I mean, I did everything I possibly could, from the hardcore drugs to all the things that characterize the downtown east side per se.
You smoke crack in it?
Yeah, not something I would want to do again. But yeah, what an experience, the whole thing. I mean, it doesn't summarize very well.
No, it doesn't. But I wonder about the amount of personal risk you put yourself at. You also shoot heroin. I'm assuming this was for the very first time for both of these drugs.
Yeah.
Did the risk of doing that stuff occur to you?
Yeah, it was something I had to think about for sure. But the risk for me was like whether or not I would get addicted, because I know these are obviously very addictive substances. And I knew just the social context wasn't right for it. You know, none of my friends smoke crack or do heroin, so there's just not that social impetus to seriously get involved in doing a drug like that on the regular. So it wasn't so that wasn't so much a big scare, and ultimately that's what kind of led to my decision to, okay, let's do this.
This is an interesting journey because it starts off and it's sort of it's almost comical and to be honest, it's uncomfortable the way you approach it, in that there you are walking around the streets of Vancouver in your underwear asking somebody if you know where you can get a free meal or some clothes. Yeah. And people point you to the gathering place where they give you pretty much everything you need. What was your point there? I mean, was the point that we would eventually, you were setting us up for what was to follow, or did you know what was to follow?
I initially went out on the street with a whole bunch of presumptions. I had this idea in my mind that, a lot of the homeless were essentially, had this grossly oversimplified conception of them as just these people that scam the system. So, and I went out there with this idea that I was going to, perhaps see if that was really the case, and if so, catch it on film.
And you started finding that.
And initially I started finding that, but I think a more in-depth understanding of the problem made me realize that, although, of course, people that are panhandling and claim that money is going towards food or clothing, like that's not true. And so it is a scam. But at the same time, these people aren't just, they're not putting on their panhandling clothing and then taking it off at night, going home to, a family and kids. Like, these are people that are genuinely messed up in some way, whether it's addiction or mental illness. But these are, I think, people appropriately regarded as victims. And that was, I guess, the paradigm shift for me, is initially I didn't think they were.
Did you have any ethical issue with the fact that here you were, you had your vacant apartment sitting behind you, or sitting there, that you were trying not to go back to for a month, and you were taking a welfare check, you were using up beds in a shelter, you were using up social services, all of these intended for people who actually need them? Absolutely.
And that's a huge ethical issue. And it came to a head several times. And ultimately, it's one of those the ends justify the means arguments I would give you in response to that, if a justification is what you're looking for.
I guess, have you been criticized at all for, this is, it's nice to go down there and play homeless and go see what it feels like. But I guess you could never replicate the hopelessness of the people who actually live in that state for real.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing of it is, in doing this documentary, what we didn't want to do is just another very miserable period documentary on homelessness. We wanted to make people laugh a bit, make it engaging, hopefully inspire something, other than just sheer depression, because it's a depressing issue. And so we want to look at it in a completely different tact and see if we could get people to kind of relate with the situation more, which is why I went out there, this person that I think is more representative of the general public, definitely, than the people that they see on the street. They're just too alien. They're the other, and and hopefully, I mean, that was the goal, and hopefully that was the achievement.
The revelation you have is not startling, but it's interesting because it seems to occur to you almost spontaneously on camera, which is you can't recall one person who you ran into who wasn't addicted to something.
Yeah. You know, initially, again, I say with all my presumptions going into it, I was really looking for that person who's just using these resources and is kind of able-minded. And no, everyone out there had some kind of addiction. I remember going into the shelter and meeting people that didn't satisfy the criteria of addiction. It didn't seem like they were addicted to anything. But after, a couple of weeks of getting to know them, oh, there it is, like gambling addiction even, or just some gross addiction but it just took over their lives. Like I remember this one guy, it was gambling, but like every penny, like online from his welfare check would go to that, like clearly not functional. Everyone down there is just genuinely messed up.
It's a fascinating film. I happen to watch it in 7 parts on YouTube. Where else can people see it?
You can see it on our website at www.streetsofplenty.com.
Misha, thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. Misha Kleider, the subject of Streets of Plenty. He attempted to live for 30 days without his possessions in Vancouver's downtown east side. I won't spoil the ending for you. 2 minutes before 4 o'clock on the coast. Susan McNamee is here with some CBC